Hi everyone, Miss Smith here with another instalment of You Ain't Seen Nothing Yeti. Chapter 23, Not So Fast. Now, I didn't want to ruin the drama and excitement of discovering the Nomad was actually a seriously sinister mystery boy plotting to destroy the hotel, and Prince Global was back in all of his griping glory, so I left you to it for the next few pages. And weren't they good ones? I know you'd agree. So, not wanting to spoil all the tension, I waited until now to tell you why Grobler and his strange captors were nattering away about their disastrous plans, and the wallpaper had been quietly whispering all over the hotel. Back around the time that Grobler yelled, "My moons me is Queen Latrina," I noticed a pair of faces peeking out over the railing of the third floor balcony. It was Mum and Dad. Then only a few seconds later, I saw Nancy squeaking a quick look around the corner of the archway that leads down to the kitchen. Words can't even begin to explain the massive rush of relief I felt when I knew that Zingri and I weren't alone to have to face the peculiar pair alone. I nearly burst out crying. Anyway, here we are. Where were we? Ah, yes. "Have you been brain bonked?" the little goblin ghost scoffed. "Who's going to do that?" Jambin fluttered to the boy's shoulder and the pair of them leaned menacingly towards the glass jar. "You are." "Me?" the little goblin ghost blurted. Not on your Nelly. You must be twizzled. Are you panty bloomers on too tight?" "Ghosts can move things without touching them, correct?" the boy asked. "Well, yes," Grumbler mumbled, "but that's just things like our books or shoes, maybe twitching a few curtains or jangling the odd chain while going woo. I can't lift that thing." "Maybe not alone," the boy said, "but more of you could. Or how are you going to get more ghosts?" The boy's face split into a grin that would have made a snake queasy. "I may be human, but that does not mean I don't have certain powers." The boy lifted the patch that covered his right eye for a moment and a flash of green light filled the room. "Watch," he said. The air above reception suddenly crackled as Lady Leona Grey and Wailing Norris materialised. But something was very wrong. They were floating, limpy, as still as soldiers, like they were in a trance, and their eyes were glowing green, just like the boys'. "What's wrong with them?" Grumbler sniffed, turning up his snub nose at the newly ghost company. "Snoozingly, aren't they, amateurs?" "They're under my control," the boy said. "They've been denocralized." "Oh, handy," Grumbler chuckled. "How can I do that?" "Not unless you've been crushed by a grave gangist," Jimba answered. "Right," said the boy. He waved his arm about like he was directing traffic, and the thorny vines that tangled through the snowdrifts and up in the walls started to creak and move. "Shall we get this started?" I watched in amazed dread as a particular spiky briar, under the boy's command, snaked up the stone counter and lifted the bell jar off the little prince. "I'm going to enjoy this," Groenbless said, performing a few stretches after being cooped up for so long. Lady Leonora and Wailing Norris floated down and joined the goblin ghost at the side of the stone block. "Up we go," Groenber cooed. The three ghosts held out their hands and twitched their fingers at the counter. It shuddered. Then crunch noises came with the black and white tiles. For a moment it looked like it was going to be too heavy to float, but then the enormous thing wobbled in the air just above the snow and... "Hold it!" Mum came bounding down the staircase 3 steps at a time. "Hold it right there, young man." The boy spun around, losing concentration and his grip on Lady Lorona and Wailing Norris for a moment. The counter bumped back to the floor. "Just what do you think you are doing?" Mum looked absolutely furious. I wasn't sure how much she would have heard of the boys' conversation from way up on the 3rd floor landing, but no one was going to meddle with the reception desk and get away with it while she was around. "Can I help you?" Dad snapped as he raced after Mum. My parents strode up to the child and stood over him in that parenty way they all do. "I'm lost," the boy said suddenly, bumbled, throwing his arms wide like he needed to be hugged. "Please help me. I got caught in the storm and I can't find my parents. I think I just saw some scary ghosts moving at the block of the stone." Ha! The creepy kid had no idea Mum and Dad had been spying on him. Even if they hadn't, lying to Mum is more difficult than scrubbing out basement bathroom after Mr. Verona, the stink demon, had been to stay. She can sniff out a fib from 100 paces. "Oh, you poor thing," Mum said, suddenly stopping and looking shocked. "How did you get here?" "What?" I looked in astonishment at both my parents crowded around the strange boy, fussing and comforting. As if they didn't think fast, Mum would be hugging the right little brat in no time and he'd have something terrible to her. There was nothing left to lose. "Wait!" I screamed and dashed out through the library doors with Zingri lumbering behind me. "He's lying!" The boy jolted his head in my direction and a determined scowl creased his forehead. "I'm not lying," he began to sob. "Please, I'm so frightened. Won't you help me find my way home? I'm all alone in the world." Oh, you sweet child, Mum said, bending down and placing an arm around his shoulder. Stop! Zingri shouted. Get away from him, I yelled at Mum. Mum took the boy's hand and stood angry up again. Francis Bannister, she snapped. What is wrong with you? And Zingri, can't you see a human has wandered on off the street? We need to get him home. I could barely speak. I was so surprised and angry. This boy came into the hotel with a plan to destroy us all, and my mother takes his word over mine. I opened my mouth to protest, and she winked. I closed my mouth. Haha, my brilliant mum was playing this little blighter on his own game. She looked me square in the face and darted her eyes to something above us. Trying not to attract attention, I carefully looked upwards towards and saw Nancy silently creeping across the floor. She was getting in position to snare our unwelcome guests with her web. I looked back to the boy who was smiling sourly. He clearly thought he'd outsmarted us. I can't imagine how terrifying it must have felt, Mum said, shuffling the kid into the centre of the floor near the fountain. If you just wait here, I'll go and find out. Watch out! Groanberg suddenly screamed, waggling his stumpy green finger. He'd spotted Nancy. Mum and Dad spun around to where the little ghost was hovering by the hat stand and, ah! Mum looked like she'd seen a ghost. Well, I suppose she really had. It's nearly impossible to spot ghosts from a distance, so they looked more like smoke. So from their hiding place on the third floor balcony, my parents had missed the return of Grobler. You! Dad yelped, pointing in disbelief at the curly-shoed spectre. Prince Grobler! How? Mum squawked. I'm back, you disgusting Bannisters. Now you're in for it. Grobler shrieked back to them. Seize them, Oculus! For a second, nobody moved. Who on earth was Oculus? We'll have to find out tomorrow. See you later, guys.